fire this stuff up. I don't know if you guys are chatting, but this is a crazy, crazy news day.
I knew when I heard whistles there was ice nearby, so I was standing on my front porch, hadn't even put shoes on yet, and
cool.
within probably 60 seconds of me standing on my front porch.
Hey, Kev, I'm not sure. I don't see the chat over on this side, but I do see it over on this side. What's up, SML?
And a car crash, a really hard car crash, and I heard yelling. And as I'm driving by, it was a red truck, and nothing but the airbags and full of blood, and there was a body on the street.
I try to pay close attention to everything that's going on.
Whoever they were doing the CPR on.
It's important.
Onto a stretcher, and then put her into the ambulance and drove away. But there was no rush. There was no sirens. I already knew she hadn't made it.
We're going to start the show, and we're going to go very deep into what's developing in Minneapolis after that ICE shooting. A woman was killed in a car. ICE officers, or one officer at least, opened fire. The circumstances, a lot of people can just see what happened for themselves. There's a few different angles, but it's become this kind of really tragic, like Rorschach test, it seems, for people that are seeing different things from the same event that happened, and the killing of a woman. So the White House is saying that this was an act of self-defense. Protesters and many in the community are saying that this is not self-defense, that the woman was clearly trying to get away, and that she was shot in the face while she fled. So it's a really, really sad story, and we've got a live report from Minneapolis. Historic day. Alex, back at it again. NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now. Julia, give us the context here. Why were these ICE officers in Minneapolis? And do you know if the one that was involved, the one that did the shooting, was local, or was he from out of state? What are you guys watching on? One day.
You know, we don't know anything about the officer involved in the shooting except the fact that Secretary.
We would be streaming on Twitch and everywhere else, but we're still working on a lot of friction. Stuff, so. Julia Ainsley, your reporting on all of this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you. 2 seconds here, and then I'll give you guys a rundown if you're just new to the stream. Whoa, there are a lot of people watching on TikTok. Okay. If you're just joining us and you're wondering what this is NBC News. My name is Gadi Schwartz. I'm a correspondent and a reporter and an anchor here at NBC. I've got a show called Stay Tuned Now. That's about to air in about 10 minutes. Here on the West Coast, it's 5 o'clock. Out there on the East Coast, it's 8 o'clock, and you can always catch the stream right here. The stream is live. And what you're going to see in this stream, this is a news show like no other. Don't tell anybody. We kind of like to keep it just us here. But you can watch this in the normal way on television. You can pull it up on YouTube, Samsung TV, Roku, like whatever you've got, whatever you stream on. You can just pull it up, look for NBC News Now. And right now it's top story. And then in about 10 minutes, it's going to be Stay Tuned Now. But if you've stumbled across this stream and you're watching on the multi-view, you are in luck. This is something that no one else gets to see, and you and I, we can have this conversation in between commercial breaks. And I'm going to be monitoring. I'm going to try as hard as I can to monitor this chat while it's going. And if you guys have questions about what's happening and I get to see them, I can ask them to the correspondents. I can ask them to the people that are on the ground. Right now, you can see that is one of the feeds that's coming in over there out of Minneapolis, and we've got Maggie Vespa. That's who you see doing those interviews. She's asking people their thoughts on what happened at that scene. So we're going to be going to her at the top of the show, and we're going to be talking to her about what the community is saying. Let's see. All right. Nick, thank you so much. Let's see. I feel like, Kick. Actually, James, that's a very interesting thought. I was kind of thinking the same thing. Would love to experiment with all those things. She was legally detained and tried to flee. Uncle Sam, that's your opinion, and everyone is entitled to their opinion, except for me. I'm not going to get opinionated here. I'm just going to show you what we're seeing and talk to the people that are involved. I try to see it from both sides. Very sad. Agreed. And let's see here. Man, there's a lot happening in the chat today. Viso TV, really? SML, that's interesting. Yeah, so people can watch anywhere they like, really. But yeah, if you're watching on television, you're not going to see this multi-view. And we've got a couple of little toys. So normally, you would just see the screen. You would just see the full show, not me. What this little camera is right here, this is the camera for my iPad on my desk. So we're going to have this up for as much of the show as we possibly can, and then sometimes you'll see it like this. Oh, look who we've got above me. That is Lisa. She is basically, she's my brain. That's why she's up there. She is in the control room in 30 Rock in New York. I'm here in Los Angeles, but she is the executive producer of Stay Tuned Now. Hi, Lisa. She's in my ear all the time. She's the one that's talking right here, and I wish you guys could hear all of the super nice,
It's a team sport because we had a lot to go through today.
Yeah, a lot. And again, so we're talking about Minneapolis and all the confusion and the tension that's happening right there. That's just like the beginning of the show. After that, we're going to get into what on any other day would be the biggest headline in the world, which is the United States Special Forces landing on yet another, not one, but two oil tankers and seizing those oil tankers. So we've got new video in just a little bit ago of those commando teams fast roping down a U.S. cutter that's right next to the Bella. Bella 1 is one of the ships that we're talking about. And that Bella 1, it's really interesting. It was Guyana, it was flying a Guyana flag near Venezuela, then it switched the flag, then it painted the Russian flag on its hull, then it made a petition to the government of Russia, and Russia granted it, I don't know what it's called, but basically they were able to officially fly a Russian flag, giving it kind of like that guise of at least Russian affiliation. And then we understand that there were some Russian ships and a possible submarine that were coming to meet it and then escort it. It got all the way, I mean, the United States was chasing it basically from around Venezuela, got all the way up near the British Isles, near like Denmark, and that's when it was finally intercepted. So why did it take so long? What goes into this type of operation? We're going to be asking all those questions. Let's see. There's an oil, actually, there's not an oil embargo in this way that we've seen it in the past, and it looks like we're about to lift a lot of the sanctions, the oil sanctions that we've had on Venezuela under this condition that the money that goes into Venezuela somehow comes back to the United States. The question is how? Like, there's a lot of questions on the details. Artie, yes, another day, even crazier reality than yesterday. Like, that is so true. And I think you said that a couple of days ago, too. So let's see. I'm dedicated Team Gotti, but we do have pieces that run on Nightly and Today. Yeah, all part of NBC News, and we share all of our resources, including Lisa sometimes. Joanne Haggerty. Interesting. Yeah, that's how you see it. That's how a lot of people see it. And a lot of other people see it in a completely different way. The President of the United States, he sees it the way you see it. The mayor of Minneapolis sees it completely differently. He sees that, he called it bullshit, which you'll see in a little while. So you have local authorities and federal authorities that are on like the complete opposite side of this investigation. And normally you don't hear officials weighing in, you don't hear authorities weighing in on cause, on who's at blame. You usually hear it, well, it's under investigation. Well, it's under investigation. Today, like, it feels like all gloves are kind of off in that blame game. And so we're going to see what happens. There's a lot of people out there right now. We're, again, monitoring this feed that's coming in right over here. We'll be taking that live in just a bit, but there's a lot of people out in Minneapolis on a cold, cold night that are at these vigils protesting. There's a video of her saying she was turning around. I mean, in one of the videos, you actually see the tires turn. You see the reverse light come on, so she backs up, and then the tires turn, and then the shots are fired. And because it's cold, you see the smoke from the shots fired, and I mean, all of it happens in a second. And so whether this is going to potentially be prosecuted at the local level, we don't know. The jurisdiction questions, we don't know. I mean, there's so many unknowns, but we're going to be going to a panel of legal experts, of use of force experts. We've got a reporter on the ground. And again, this is just one part of our show tonight. At the end of the show, we're going to be doing the future of everything, as we try to do every single night. And I'm not sure if you saw, this is another game changer. ChatGPT, OpenAI, all of a sudden they are getting into the medical game in a really big way. They have launched this ChatGPT health thing. They want you to upload all of your medical records, including like your Apple Watch stuff, your Fitbit, whatever it is, and they want to basically put a doctor in your pocket. So we've got Dr. Akshay Sayal here to talk a lot about that, because you know there are implications there, good, bad, scary. Maybe it'll help, maybe it'll cause some problems, but we'll be talking to him about that. Let's see here. We've got, does POTUS surprise anyone anymore? That's a good question. Blogger MS, I don't know. I mean, I never know what tomorrow is going to bring. I think all interesting.
I can think I could fairly say I'm surprised a good amount.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised too. I'm in a constant state of just eyes open. Tina, hello Tina, how are you? Great to see you. Always wonderful to see you. SML, hopefully we can get you this mug soon, because I know you really want it. Keegan, hello, how's it going? Ooh, Valencia County, New Mexico, sending love right back to good old home. I miss it. Grew up in Berlin for a little while. Let's see. Interesting. Isn't it an act of war by stopping a ship in international waters like that? And to take that question even higher, especially when the ship is now flagged as a Russian ship. So we don't know. It really depends on, I guess, what the Russians do and what we do next. James, I mean, we got to get in the mug business and the tea business, I think.
But what's the tea today? What's your tea today?
Today, the tea is usually green tea.
If you want, so I'm just moving it to the top of the stack.
Because you just gotta. You know,
I really gotta send you some various teas for you to try. I feel like we gotta up your tea game.
Calm. Yeah, chamomile would be nice. Chris. Interesting. Yeah. No, SML, I have not, thank goodness. Right now we're into Give a Mouse a Cookie, which is a much needed break from the news. All right, so what's gonna happen in 30 seconds is the show is gonna come on in this black box over here. You're gonna see the entire show, and then I'm gonna do the open, and then I'm gonna rush back here, and I'm going to talk to Maggie Vespa, who is out in Minnesota, and we're gonna try to get some of your questions answered if we can. And then we're off to the races. We're gonna try to get as much context on what's happening in Minnesota as humanly possible. 5 seconds. All right, have a good show, everybody. We'll see you in a second here. Hey guys, it's Scotty Schwartz, and tonight, two massive stories developing both here in the United States and abroad. Starting in Minneapolis, where an ICE agent shot and killed a woman during a confrontation between federal agents and protesters. DHS is calling it an act of self-defense, but the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, is pushing back.
Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull.
Then, while details of the Minneapolis shooting are still emerging, U.S. forces have seized 2 tankers now that ship Venezuelan oil. Special forces boarding one ship with some of the Russian Navy close by. We've got a lot to cover this hour, so let's get going, because this is Stay Tuned Now. An anger outburst in a city on edge in Minneapolis tonight after a woman was shot and killed by ICE agents today. That 37-year-old, now identified by local officials as Renee Nicole Good, the mother of a 6-year-old and an American citizen, while federal officials and the president coming to the defense of ICE, calling the shooting, quote, self-defense. This happened this morning on a street filled with homes and witnesses, cameras rolling on several angles. This is one of the clearer angles that we've seen. We're going to play the whole video, audio full, from the lead up to the shooting to the aftermath, so you can see it as it went down, and then we're going to slow it down. Watch.
Criminals! You're criminals! What the actual You are insane!
Okay, so take another look here. The ICE agents approach the car. They tug at the handle right there. The SUV reverses. There's another officer that comes around from the front of the car. Then at the bottom, you see the car wheels turn, starts to drive, then gunfire. In another angle posted by President Trump from down the road, you can see the chaos play out on the other end of the street. Watch this. And that one, you almost see the officer appear to be in front of the vehicle for a split second there. In another angle of the aftermath, you can hear someone describing themselves as the wife of the woman inside the car. And with a warning, this is pretty disturbing.
They just killed that lady right there in that car, y'all. Killed that lady in that car. Somebody come get their people. Hey, was you riding with her?
Now, the Department of Homeland Security releasing a statement very quickly after all that, saying, quote, "Today, ICE officers in Minneapolis were conducting targeted operations when rioters began blocking ICE officers, and one of these violent rioters weaponized her vehicle, attempted to run over our law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them, an act of domestic terrorism." Again, this happening in a busy neighborhood with witnesses on the street and inside their homes. Here's some of their accounts.
I knew when I heard whistles there was ice nearby, so I was standing on my front porch, hadn't even put shoes on yet, and within probably 60 seconds of me standing on my front porch, the protester was shot in the face.
I heard 2 gunshots and a car crash, a really hard car crash, and then I heard yelling. And as I'm driving by, it was a red truck and nothing but the airbags and full of blood, and there was a body on the street.
I watched as they got whoever they were doing the CPR onto a stretcher, and then put her into the ambulance and drove away. But there was no rush, there was no sirens. I already knew she hadn't made it.
Maggie Vespa is in Minneapolis tonight. And Maggie, it looks like there's a pretty sizable crowd behind you. What's the latest out there?
Yeah. I mean, Gotti, we've had hundreds, maybe close to 1,000 people at its peak out here protesting, coming together, chanting the name Renee Good over and over. And I mean, the through line here is that they're furious. And no one that we've spoken to out here agrees with the Trump administration's characterization that you read from that DHS statement as to what happened out here. And key is that video. And I'm so glad that you walked through it in detail in your intro, because that's all people have been doing here is discussing what they see in the video. People have been telling us what they see is a woman who police said initially was blocking the road from those ICE agents getting through. But then when they surrounded her on foot, they say they feel like they see a woman who was scared, who tried to back up to turn her vehicle to get away from the officers because she was afraid. And they feel like they saw an officer shoot her needlessly. And all of this amid the backdrop of this kind of this swell of ICE officers, more than 2,000, according to DHS, coming into this city just this week. The largest operation in the agency's history, they say. And people in Minneapolis are very aware that they're kind of under this national microscope now. And now, truly on edge with this violence today boiling over. It's just a very scary time for people here. And here's some of what we heard from people in that crowd.
We're scared in a way that, what do we do? How do we respond to this? I don't have a lot of good answers other than we should stand up and speak. Everybody should.
Yeah, so we heard a lot of that from people here today. And the other thing, Gotti, that we're hearing is that people want the name of the officer. That ICE officer has not been named, has not been identified by the administration or anyone else. And we heard multiple people chanting, and at times the entire crowd chanting, that they want the name released and they want that officer prosecuted. And obviously, Gotti, keep in mind, you and I both know this is a city with a traumatic history when it comes to police violence. So this hits very close to home in Minneapolis. Gotti.
Yeah, and Maggie, what are we learning about the woman that was killed, Renee Nicole Good here?
Yeah, so her mother speaking out, in addition to kind of the sort of like basic biographical details that we got from her, we've learned that she's 37 years old, multiple local officials saying that she is a U.S. citizen, that she was not the target of ICE operations here today. Her mother speaking to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, calling her daughter an amazing human being who had always taken care of people, said she lives in Minneapolis here with her partner. An Instagram account that appears to be connected to her describes her as a wife, a mother, and a poet. And her mother telling the paper about the way her daughter died. Quote, these are her words, "That's so stupid how she was killed," and adding, quote, "She was probably terrified." So, Gotti, you're not the only one asking those questions. People inside this crowd out here absolutely want to know who this woman is. And we've been hearing that chant over and over. People saying, say her name, and then they yell Renee Good. So the whole city, I can tell you, pretty much learning her name in real time tonight.
Yeah, Maggie Vespa, and this is one of those cases where, there's a large crowd of protesters and they are angry at law enforcement, and yet the only law enforcement that's around them are the local police. Are you seeing any friction, like the type of friction that we were seeing a little bit earlier in the day?
That is such a fascinating question, and your timing is so poignant, because actually as we were walking here, my producer pointed out, and I hadn't even really noticed it, she said, have you noticed that we haven't seen any police presence here tonight? Gotti, we're not even seeing local police here, and perhaps because of the reason that you highlight. This is one of those moments where the protest is against law enforcement. People might expect law enforcement to be here en masse to kind of keep the peace, so to speak. We heard the police chief earlier, Minneapolis Police Chief O'Hara, stressing to keep things peaceful and calm, the mayor as well, but truly out here, I can tell you, I haven't seen a single cop or a squad car here, let alone federal law enforcement, let alone, again, ICE. So that presence, if it's here, it's minimal, it's under the radar, and again, perhaps, Gotti, for the reason that you highlighted there.
And we've heard from the mayor, he wants ICE out of Minneapolis. We've heard from people that want that officer identified. But when it comes to what happens to the officer, what are the people out there saying that they want to see?
They want him criminally charged. I mean, they've said that looking at the video, they don't see grounds for firing. They don't believe that his life was in danger or that it was reasonable for him to believe so. So we've heard that from people here. Keep in mind, getting into the granular of that, nobody said which charges they want him to face. So, this is very early, and they're kind of sorting through and digesting this in real time. But at the very least, they want him named. They want the administration to, come forward with that sort of accountability. But, we've seen these cases in the past. We've seen this in Chicago multiple times over the summer. It doesn't always work like that under this administration. These officers don't always get named when someone is shot by one of their officers. So we will see how this plays out. But we're very clear on that's what the people out here in this crowd tonight absolutely want.
Maggie Vespa on the scene out there in Minneapolis. Maggie, thank you so much. Meanwhile, we've been hearing these fiery statements throughout the day from local authorities that appear to be completely at odds with federal authorities. Here's some of what they've had to say.
I want to remind everybody that the act like we saw today of using a vehicle to try to kill an officer and his colleagues and the other people around him is something that every politician, every elected official, everyone in this country should be able to rally around and say that it is wrong.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit.
These vehicle rammings are domestic acts of terrorism. We're working with the Department of Justice to prosecute them as such.
Do you have no decency? Do you have no decency? We have someone dead in their car for no reason whatsoever. I don't want to be right about this, but I said if they do this, they're going to create a chaotic situation where someone innocent's going to get killed.
Why do you think the Trump administration is so fixated on Minnesota right now?
Well, I wish I knew. I mean, I wish they would just leave us the fuck alone.
There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart.
Now, I want to get to NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos and NBC News law enforcement analyst Jim Kavanaugh, who join us right now. Danny and Jim, if we can, look, we're all seeing the same video, and so many people are seeing different things. But I want to quickly play this crucial moment that you might have already slowed down and tried to make sense of, because it does appear as though this will be the crux of what's to come. You see this moment where they're trying to open up the door. There's that officer that comes in the front there. The wheels turn, and then we don't see exactly where the officer is right at the point of those wheels turning, but we see right after it. And we also saw those reverse lights there. Gentlemen, I want to know what you see here. Jim, starting with you, what do you see?
Well, I'd point out some things that, you know, if you were commanding this case and doing the review and the investigation, you'd really want to break down into the microseconds and still photography and get all the timing just right. The vehicle backs up, and then the vehicle is put in drive. The front driver's wheel turns straight, and then you'll see the wheel spin. You'll see the front driver's wheel spin. I believe it loses traction on the ice. And if you can watch it closely, that's right when the ICE agent in the front draws his duty weapon. When that wheel spins, he pulls out his duty weapon. And he fires, and the car's coming toward him, he believes. And that's what the investigation is going to have to show. Was he in imminent danger of great bodily harm or death? And, you know, there's a lot of talk, you know, this person's a terrorist, this person's mindset. It's pretty clear from the evidence, Agati, we've seen today, that she was an activist, that she was blocking the road from ICE so they couldn't go down there, or at least impeding them. And that's obstructing the police. It's impeding law enforcement officers. It's not terrorism. That's an arrestable offense to obstruct a federal agent, but you're arrested for that. It's not a terrorism offense. I believe she was trying to get away, but it doesn't matter for the officer who's in the position. If the car's going to run you over, and his belief is the car's going to run him over, if that becomes reasonable after the investigation shows us everything, then it doesn't matter what's in her mind, whether she's trying to escape or she's, you know, Al-Qaeda. It doesn't matter. His perception is this vehicle's trying to run me over. Now, they said he went to the hospital. Does he have any bruising? And, of course, the long shots from the other post that President Trump distributed from a couple of houses away, it has an angle of the officer near the front of the car. So that should be broken down into still shots to see his exact positioning. And FBI will, triangulate those shots through the windshield in front of the car and see exactly where he was. Gather all the video, interview all the witnesses to come to a conclusion, Gotti.
And when you look at the video and you look at it frame by frame, it almost appears as though that officer, before the shots are fired, there's a quick frame in which it looks like he's holding a cell phone, and he may be video recording. So there may be other video out there that we haven't seen. Danny, I do want to ask about this reversing, that that you see, the tire, the turn, the body positioning of the officer. Is this something a local prosecutor would see where they look at the totality and they say, yeah, we have enough to move forward with potential charges here?
You've raised a couple thorny issues here. Let's talk about the use of force first. So when you look at ICE's own firearms use policy, the policy says that you can use deadly force on a fleeing suspect, but only if that fleeing suspect poses a deadly threat to the officer. And, you know, when you think about it, this is the state of the case law in the United States today. But what's interesting about it is it's kind of a paradox. I mean, almost by definition, someone fleeing is often not posing a threat. But certainly it is possible that someone fleeing, the fleeing felon rule as it's called, could cause or pose a threat to someone. So that is possible. So the mere fact that someone's trying to get away, if they're still posing a danger to the ICE officer, a deadly threat, then force may be authorized. You asked about another thing that I think is going to be in the coming days a very, very complicated and possibly a constitutional crisis type issue. And I do not like to use the word constitutional crisis very often, but it could be, and here's how. If local prosecutors want to charge the ICE agent, Donald Trump, the president, can't just pardon that conduct. However, ICE agents do enjoy, and federal agents do, immunity if they're carrying out their employment, their duties, and they don't violate constitutional rights in doing so. But who the heck is to say, ultimately, whether or not constitutional rights were violated? Local prosecutors or the federal government? And what happens if they decide to apprehend the ICE agent, the local authorities? What happens then? There is a potential constitutional crisis here. And again, likely not to happen, but there is a possibility.
That raises an issue in which you see if there are charges that are filed, at some point there is a physical turning in or an arrest that's made. Jim, from a law enforcement perspective, I can't think of another time where something like this has seemed possible or potentially imminent. And we're not saying that that's what's going to happen. Obviously, it's going to be up to prosecutors to decide what to do. But if that happened, Jim, what would happen? Would this be an officer that turns himself in? Would this be an officer that is potentially shielded from physical arrest by another law enforcement force in the United States? How do you see this playing out?
Well, you know, this has happened before in the U.S. Down here in the South, ATF agents would get arrested by state authorities because the sheriff was in cahoots with the bootleggers, and they'd get arrested. And what we did in those old days was go to the federal judge and get a court order, a writ, get the agent released from the charges, and the case would be moved into the federal court. And then the judge would dismiss the case. And the federal judge has a lot of authority to do certain things like that. Normally, those things aren't at odds. I think Danny is spot on in his analysis, because normally we don't have the dual sovereigns, the state and the federal government, at odds. They work together. The U.S. attorney talks to the district attorney. Are you going to charge him? Are we going to charge him? What's the proof? What's best in the interest of justice and the citizens? You know, that's what happens normally. This is a very difficult circumstance when dual sovereigns are at odds, when the governor and the president are fighting, and the 2,000 ICE agents come into a city with 600 Minneapolis cops, and they're not talking, they're not coordinating. You know, I'd be worried about blue-on-blue shootings, a policeman shooting an ICE, or vice versa, because they didn't coordinate their activities. They're all on the street. You know, it's just very unprecedented, like Danny said. So, but as far as federal agents being charged by state authorities, that's not new. It has happened in our history, and normally it's handled by the federal courts. But usually those cases are pretty clear that, you know, the agent shouldn't have been arrested. And but if it's different, you know, if the facts turn out different in this case, we'll just have to see. But I think we need a whole lot more investigation to clarify this for both sides. People are looking at it, Gotti, very tribally. If you don't like ICE, then, you know, they think the agent is guilty. If you're on the side of law enforcement, then you think he was justified. So you can't decide this tribally. You have to decide this on a foundation of facts, carefully analyzed, meticulously collected, and looked at with an objective person to say, this is wrong, this is murder, or this is a justifiable use of force. So that's what's got to happen. Yeah. That's going to take a little time. It's going to take some time, and for the rest of us in society, I mean, this is a Rorschach test for the real opinions that matter. Is going to be a prosecutor, a judge, and potentially, if it ever comes to that, a jury. I do, Danny, I want to ask you, in a perfect world, like politics, justice, those would ideally be separate, but given the environment, the history of Minnesota, the rhetoric that we're seeing, how much pressure do you think that there is going to be on a local prosecutor to try to bring charges, given what we've heard from Maggie Vespa just a little while ago?
A lot, but pressure aside, any local prosecutor has to consider the issues of the supremacy clause. And then they have to consider issues of self-defense. So you have to, as a prosecutor, you have to consider whether or not that use of force was justified. You have to consider whether or not you can get over the immunity standard. And by the way, a good point that was just made was that in analyzing whether deadly force was justified for police officers, one of the bedrock rules is that we don't use the benefit of Monday morning quarterbacking. We don't get to hyper-analyze every frame. We have to put ourselves in the position of the officer at the time force was used, the information available to him, and we cannot simply look with the glorious benefit of hindsight as to whether or not use of force was justified. These are all factors a prosecutor has to consider before seeking to charge someone and prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, essentially disproving, irrespective of what the burden is in Minnesota, but essentially getting over the self-defense bar, getting over the sovereign immunity bar, getting over just the facts that this might have been a qualified use of deadly force. Those are a lot of challenges, and it wouldn't be an act of cowardice to not charge this case if a prosecutor thinks that they simply cannot get a conviction. This is a you mentioned a Rorschach test earlier, and it's so interesting. 15 years ago, when video first started making its way into the courts, I thought, oh, great, no more subjectivity. We're going to know for sure what happened. And the opposite has happened. Two people with different minds, reasonable minds, look at the same video, not an ink blot, but video of what happened, and come to completely different conclusions.
Yeah, and now it's not just two people. It is millions and millions and millions of people around this country and around the world that are now seeing this and feeling that exact same thing. Danny Cevallos, Jim Kavanaugh, thank you guys so very much. Now, all this is unfolding during one of the largest ICE operations in the country. The operation started back in December. It involves thousands and thousands of agents. It's already led to hundreds of arrests. Earlier tonight, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said ICE agents across the country are facing more confrontations. And according to Noem, this was the second time this particular officer had been involved in one.
The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues. He was treated at a local hospital, has been released, and is now with family. ICE alone is facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them and an 8,000% increase in death threats against all of them. In fact, the very same officer who was attacked today had previously been dragged by an anti-ICE rioter who had rammed him with a car and drug him back in June.
NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now. Julia, give us the context here. Why were these ICE officers in Minneapolis? And do you know if the one that was involved, the one that did the shooting, was local or was he from out of state?
You know, we don't know anything about the officer involved in the shooting except the fact that Secretary Kristi Noem just said he's a very experienced law enforcement officer. He's not somebody new to ICE, and she says he acted according to his training. What we do know about what ICE is doing overall in Minneapolis is it's been a huge escalating surge, and it escalated again on Sunday when DHS sent over 2,000 more ICE officers. In addition to those they sent in December to ramp up operations. 1,500 of those are for deportation arrests or deportation officers, and then they sent 600 to investigate alleged fraud in Minneapolis. This is, of course, after a right-wing YouTuber alleged fraud in daycares run by Somalis in Minneapolis. Much of that was debunked by a Minnesota agency overseeing those daycares. But nevertheless, ICE is there. It's ramping up. And just today, Gotti, we saw Border Patrol also come into Minneapolis. So that's something I'm watching in the days ahead. Secretary Noem said they were not going to call off operations. They would continue in Minneapolis. And so it could be that we see more protest. And if, history teaches us anything, at least recent history, Border Patrol seems to usually use the more aggressive tactics, including crowd control tactics. In fact, Greg Bovino, who was standing next to Secretary Noem tonight, is the commander of the Border Patrol forces there. He was seen throwing gas canisters into protesters who crowded around Border Patrol in Chicago just late last year. So a lot to watch there as it escalates. In terms of what these particular officers were doing, she says they were on their way back from an operation. A witness on the ground says that there was a peaceful protest. People were blowing whistles to alert others in the area that ICE was coming through, and that this car was attempting to block ICE from going through as an act of peaceful protest. That's according to a witness that we've spoken with.
And Julia, I mean, tensions were high before this happened. Tensions are now very much at a boiling point. Do you get the sense that we're going to start to see the same type of operations that we saw this morning, tomorrow morning, and the day after, and the day after? Are we going to see a ramp up from ICE?
Yeah, if we take the secretary at her word, there could be a ramp up. There would be a continuation of these operations, and then we could see even more now that Border Patrol is involved. I think the thing to watch for as well is just the response. Sometimes, I mean, I've been on ride-alongs in ICE in communities where people going to work have no idea ICE is operating in their community. But this administration does share a lot about what their plans are. It's one of the reasons why we were able to report over 2,000 ICE agents were going into Minneapolis earlier this week. And so that does spark protest. It gets attention. That's why those were whistles being blown this morning. That's why this woman was blocking ICE with her car. These are things that garner public attention. And so not only are we expecting to see more immigration arrests, but also much more public backlash after this incident, and Border Patrol and ICE trying to counter those protesters. And sometimes the two sides may clash, Gotti.
Yeah, with that attention comes so much friction. Julia Ainsley, your reporting on all of this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you. And right now I want to bring in Minneapolis Councilwoman Robin Walmsley. Councilwoman, thank you so very much for joining us. I know you issued this joint statement earlier alongside some of your colleagues. It read in part, "We're united in our support of our immigrant community and residents in the wake of these attacks. We demand that ICE immediately leave our city so we can get rid of their chaos that ended the life of one of our neighbors today." Councilwoman, neighbors and witnesses reacted with outrage, and they continue to do so outside the scene. Your mayor has blasted ICE and the operations in Minneapolis. What's your reaction to what we saw?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My reaction is very much aligned with what thousands of my fellow residents are expressing right now. And it's an immediate desire and need to see ICE be removed from Minneapolis. There is no reason why we lost Renee Good, a 37-year-old mother who was simply caring and protecting her neighbors. There is no reason why she should have been shot and killed by a federal ICE agent. So most immediately, there's disgust, there's anger, but there's also a call to action to do everything that we can to have ICE be removed, have the federal agent responsible for her murder be arrested, and for the investigation that will surely unfold post this tragedy, for there to be local ownership over that investigation, because the feds cannot simply investigate themselves after carrying out this murder today.
Yeah, you're talking about a call to action, and I want to play something that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said at her press conference a couple of hours ago. Take a listen to this.
This city has burned before, and your mayor and your governor let it happen. President Trump is not going to let that happen. He and our federal law enforcement officers are here to bring peace and to bring public safety and to ensure that criminal activity is stopped and that people who perpetuate it will face consequences.
What do you take from her statements there? With those words in mind, do you think that the Twin Cities are headed for some sort of confrontation?
The biggest confrontation that our residents are experiencing is the threat of ICE agents being here. We lost a resident, a beautiful mother, this morning, because of the gross actions by a federal ICE agent. And that was avoidable. It did not have to happen. And we can prevent ICE agents from further terrorizing our civilians by having them leave. And it's very clear if they don't, they're going to continue their campaign of cruelty. In fact, just moments after shooting and killing Renee Good, they went down the street to a high school, Roosevelt High School, and proceeded to target and harass and assault educators and families. That is what we're dealing with right now. So the biggest threat, if we truly are prioritizing the safety of Minneapolis residents, are ICE agents themselves. And if they truly cared about our well-being, they will leave today. Trump will issue the order for them to leave today.
Councilwoman Robin Walmsley, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your perspective. And turning now to Venezuela. Earlier today, the United States seized another 2 oil tankers with ties to the country, one in the North Atlantic, one out in the Caribbean. The one out in the Atlantic, that one was originally called the Bella 1. It was flying a Russian flag when it was eventually stopped. It evaded capture from the United States Coast Guard for weeks before the United States forces finally descended on it. You're seeing some of that FLIR video, those forces fast roping down from some of the helicopters. All this while Secretary of State Marco Rubio laid out the government's plans for Venezuela's near future. Take a listen to that.
Step one is the stabilization of the country. We don't want it descending into chaos. The second phase will be a phase that we call recovery, and that is ensuring that American, Western, and other companies have access to the Venezuelan market in a way that's fair. And then the third phase, of course, will be one of transition.
Let's get straight over to NBC News senior national correspondent Courtney Cubie. Courtney, when we look at how far this tanker went, I don't know if we have the graphic, but I mean, started near Venezuela, made its way all the way to close to Iceland. Look at that track. Why wasn't it stopped sooner? Why wasn't it boarded sooner? And what do we know about how this operation today went down?
So the U.S. attempted to board it and to seize it early on, about 2 weeks ago, and they rebuffed any kind of a boarding. And so the U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. military tracked it and followed it as it moved east and northeast up towards where they and planned for this operation, and then finally carried it out today once they got, I guess, close enough within land to land that they were able to bring helicopters and other things more easily from land out towards the ship. So the operation looked pretty similar from what we know about it to the previous 2 seizures, and then frankly the other seizure that occurred today down towards Venezuela, in that it was Coast Guard, elite Coast Guard people who were trained in contested or potentially dangerous boardings like this one. They were the ones who were fast roping down off of U.S. military helicopters. The Coast Guard were the ones who boarded the ships, and then ultimately U.S. law enforcement officials were the ones who essentially took control of the ship. But it was Department of Homeland Security and Coast Guard led, supported by the U.S. military, and that's similar to what we've seen. And the questions now are, what will happen to these 2 ships that were both seized today? The Bella 1 that you mentioned is up in the North Atlantic, and it doesn't have any oil in it. So is the U.S. going to bring it all the way back to the United States? Not clear. But the Sophia down towards Venezuela, that one we are told will be brought to the United States, and it does have oil on it. And that oil could actually be part of the oil deal that President Trump announced on social media yesterday.
Yeah, now online there are so many rumors and theories circulating about what may have been on that boat, so maybe we'll get some clarity there. I do want to ask about the Russia of it all. Like, the boat had a Russian flag painted on its hull. The Russian government allowed it to reflag Russian right before all this happened. I know that was kind of a flurry of activity, and then we saw what we saw today, with reports that the Russian Navy, or parts of the Russian Navy, including maybe like a Russian sub, was nearby. Is that true? Do we know that for sure?
Yeah, and potentially tracking along with it for part of the journey. And that just opens up, why this was such a complicated situation here with the Bella specifically. Now, when it left Venezuela, it was known, the U.S. considered it stateless. That means that it wasn't, it didn't have a flag flying over it. But as you mentioned, the Russians allowed the ship to temporarily flag with a Russian flag. Now, why that matters here is a stateless vessel can legally be seized and boarded during in international waters. But if it's flying the flag of another nation, then the United Nations law of the sea actually protects it against certain boardings and seizures. So that's what the Russians said today after this operation was undertaken. They said that this was a violation of the United Nations law. Now, the U.S. still, despite that flag change, or temporary or not, the U.S. still maintains, the Trump administration, they still say this was stateless, and that was what justified this boarding.
Wow. And Courtney, while I've got you, there was an article that just crossed in the New York Times, and it had a couple of details. We've known some of the details about the operation into Caracas to seize Nicolas Maduro. But this one talked about how one of the Chinooks that was inserting that commando team, that it was hit, and that one of the flight leaders, as I understand it, was also struck in the leg. And it sounded like it got a lot more hairy than we may have learned in the first hours when this went down. It seemed like this was a flawless mission. And yet that Chinook was able to get out of there. But a lot of it is raising the question of, like, did this come very, very close to being a, I don't want to say a Black Hawk Down situation, but that Chinook was loaded with a full team of commandos, right?
Mm-hmm. You know what is reminiscent to me of the Bin Laden raid? Remember at the beginning of the raid, there was a modified special operations Black Hawk helicopter in that case. So another people mover, but slightly smaller than a Chinook. That the wash from inside the compound where Bin Laden was sort of hit it in such a way that it caused the helicopter to spin out of control and crash into the compound. And it reminded me of that, in that it was sort of the beginning of the ground component of this operation, and you had a helicopter that went into trouble. Now, in the case of the helicopter at the Bin Laden compound, they had the SEALs had to destroy it on site. In the case of this Chinook at the Maduro compound, it was able to hobble on. And you'll remember the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, at the press conference at Mar-a-Lago on Saturday, he did mention that there was a U.S. helicopter that was damaged, but it was able to fly back out. They didn't say, I mean, it took some digging for us to find out that, in fact, there were at least 7 individuals who were injured during this raid. 2 of them remain hospitalized, and one of them, we did find out yesterday, had been shot multiple times in the leg or the legs. And we believe that was during this part of the raid. Because remember, the way that the chairman described it, he said that when they were moving into the compound, they started taking fire. And once they got Maduro and his wife, and they were trying to leave with them, they took even heavier fire. And he said that the U.S. responded with overwhelming force. So, as the days go on, we learn little tidbits more and more about this raid. Who knows what we'll continue to learn over time. Maybe we'll find out a little bit more about what they used to actually carry out these strikes, Scotty.
Yeah, hindsight's always 20/20. The president did allude to the high-stakes nature of this, but I mean, wow, just learning these details has been pretty wild. NBC's Courtney Cubie, thank you so much. And I want to bring in John Kilduff, partner at Again Capital LLC. John, great to see you again. Getting into the specifics of how this is going to work in terms of the flow of oil. We're hearing, the 30 million to 50 million barrels. Give us a little bit of context here. Like, how much oil are we talking? Does that include the oil that's being seized, or is there some sort of mechanism for the oil that's currently in Venezuela to start flowing to the United States soon?
Well, there is, and good to see you again, Gadi, as well. There is oil in inventory in Venezuela. The infrastructure, again, is dilapidated. We estimate that they could get upwards of 1 million barrels a day exported on a consistent basis. I assume 100% of that would now be going to the U.S. Via the U.S. oil companies, with Chevron leading the charge. Put that in perspective, you recall when President Biden was staring down some high crude oil prices, he was releasing 1 million barrels a day out of the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and it did seem to have some effect on lowering prices. So that would be the flow through. This reminds me, though, of back in the day with the Iraqi situation when Saddam Hussein was trying to be squeezed out, and they established what was called the Oil for Food program, where Iraqi oil was allowed to be sold on the open market through UN auspices, and that money was held in escrow to be used for food, medical, and other humanitarian relief. It had a mixed track record, but that appears to be what is being planned here by U.S. officials. There's more to come on this. There's supposedly the big three, Exxon, Conoco, Chevron CEOs will be meeting at the White House on Friday. I do know there is a terrific appetite by all three of those companies to recoup their billions of dollars of investment that they have lost in Venezuela through nationalization and other illegal activities by the Maduro government. But it's all there to be had. And I do want to make one other point. There's a lot of talk about what this will cost, what it would take to sort of stand up Venezuela's oil infrastructure again. It would be tens of billions of dollars a year. But I would point out that ExxonMobil itself, its annual revenues exceed $325 billion just last year alone. So this is money that they can, and monies that they can. It's in their ballpark. It's in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, there's time and then there's money, but when it comes to the time question, like, what does the timeline look like?
Well, again, in my estimation, in our work, we believe that Venezuela, again, could be exporting to the U.S. Upwards of 1 million barrels of crude oil a day. And again, this is heavy, sour crude oil that our U.S. Gulf Coast refiners were built for. Right now, they're mostly refining Canadian tar sand oil, but you could see oil flows of that level in 6 to 12 months, I think, is realistic. Probably more towards the latter end of that, the higher end of that range. But they have been consistently, even now, or right before this all went down, again, exporting upwards of 700,000 barrels a day, mostly to China, partly to Cuba, and to other countries who are willing to participate in this black market of sanctioned Venezuelan crude oil.
Got it. We'll see what happens to the black market after all of this and all the dust settles. John Kilduff from Again Capital, thank you so much for joining us. And coming up, Nick Reiner's arraignment for the murder of his parents did not go quite as planned, why his lawyer is now removing himself from the case. That's coming up.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, that was a lot of information to process. So 6 months to a year before we're back up to seeing 1 million barrels of oil coming out of Venezuela. That timeline is pretty significant. Yeah, well, it's just a lot to process. Anyway, I was trying to read as many comments as I possibly could, but chat is on fire today. So let's see. Yes, I see your point there. I don't know if it's going to $1.99 a gallon. Let's see. I can see how you would feel that way. Can I have that NBC News mug on Amazon? It's not there yet. Maybe one day. Good for U.S. refineries. Minimum costs. Anthony Robledo, you know what you're talking about, and I need to look into exactly what you mean by that. Are we here, Mike? Okay. Where do you live, Bolton? Why is diesel more than gas? I think it's the refining process. Okay, so coming up, it has been 1 year since the fire, so we're going to be talking to Liz Kreutz about some of the frustration, some of the anger. Ooh, we got to go. All right, keep watching. We'll chat in a little bit.
5, 4, 3.
Hey, welcome back. Here are some of the other headlines we are watching tonight. Protesters in Iran are ramping up again in response to the country's economy and the regime's crackdown on demonstrations. One human rights group says thousands have been arrested and at least 36 people have been killed. Now, today, Iran's president told security forces to stay away from peaceful protesters and cut back on the violence. And there was a very hard landing for passengers traveling from Lima, Peru to Atlanta last night after the plane's landing gear tires got blown. You could see it right there. One passenger reported that the landing was so hard it broke a bathroom door, shook loose a ceiling panel. Officials say no one was hurt and the FAA is now investigating. And there was a dramatic rescue in Baltimore on Tuesday where a mom and 2 kids were saved from this burning building. As video shows, the mom dropping her 2 kids from a second-floor window to neighbors that you could see there waiting down below. The mom then got out using a ladder. The cause of that fire is under investigation. And one of the other big stories we are following today is what was supposed to be a very normal arraignment hearing for Nick Reiner, who is accused of stabbing his parents and killing them, filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle. But there was this illegal shakeup that led to some other plans. NBC's Morgan Chesky has the latest.
Yeah, Gotti, we're here outside the courthouse at what essentially is the second arraignment that wasn't for 32-year-old Nick Reiner. All eyes were on the courtroom on the 5th floor here earlier today, where we saw Nick Reiner escorted in behind a plexiglass barrier, and then his defense team, led by Alan Jackson, walked in. The two exchanged about a 5-minute conversation before Jackson and the judge went into the chambers with the rest of the defense team for about a 10-minute conversation. And it was upon emerging that we learned that stunning news. Jackson stepping away and no longer representing Reiner in this ongoing case where Reiner's accused of 2 first-degree murder charges, with prosecutors saying that special circumstances apply because these are multiple murders here. We did have a chance to hear from Jackson shortly after, saying that pursuant to California law, he is confident that Nick Reiner will be found not guilty of these murder charges. Certainly a line to take note of, because there has been a lot of questions regarding the mental health, the mental competency of Nick Reiner since the deaths of Rob and Michelle Reiner in December inside their Brentwood home. We have learned, according to multiple sources, that Reiner has been taken off of suicide watch inside the correctional facility where he's being held here in downtown LA. But there's little else that we've heard directly tied to the sole individual charged in these murders. A judge did sign a sealed medical document essentially tied to this case, but we don't know what exactly it entailed, if it was perhaps for a psychiatric evaluation or something of that nature. We won't be able to find that out right now. What we do know is that Nick Reiner now has a public defender representing him, who requested from the judge 1 month to go over the evidence that his prior defense team had acquired and gathered over the last 3.5 weeks or so. The judge complied, and then the only audible words we heard from Nick Reiner were in response to the judge saying, yeah, I agree to that, saying, essentially confirming that he's aware that his next court date will be February 23rd. And it was striking to see him inside that courtroom, head shaved, wearing that prison jumpsuit, even cracking a smile or two while conversing with the deputies that stood guard nearby. But for now, he remains behind bars, being held without bail, and we'll likely see him back in a courtroom in more than a month. Gotti.
Morgan Chesky, thank you so much. It's been a year since the wildfires hit Altadena and the Palisades, devastating the Los Angeles community. 31 people lost their lives. Over 16,000 structures were destroyed and over 37,000 acres burned. A year later, Angelenos are still rebuilding, but that's been slowed down by insurance, by a lot of bureaucratic red tape. And Liz Kreutz reminds us of those terrifying days when the city was on fire.
In the burn scars of the LA fires, the rubble is now cleared, some construction underway. But tonight, as these communities mark 1 year since the deadly Palisades and Eaton fires,
and you deserve the truth.
Many survivors, like the Andonian family, tell us what they're still waiting for are answers.
It's getting harder and harder, facing the reality.
Marine and Haraj, who we first met just days after losing their home in Pacific Palisades, say they were hoping by now they'd have broken ground on their new home. But like so many, have been held up by insurance, rising costs, and red tape. Across all of LA, construction is underway on around 900 homes, just a fraction of the 16,000 structures destroyed.
Why? Why did they let it happen?
What is on the Andonians' empty lot, a clear view of the reservoir, the one that was empty and unable to be used to fight the fire that burned down this seaside neighborhood.
You believe this was 100% preventable?
Yes, 100% I believe that. And that's what makes me upset.
No one has taken responsibility, accountability.
The couple are now among thousands suing the state, other agencies, and utilities, alleging their collective failures led to the widespread destruction of the Palisades fire. The governor's office saying the suit against the state is baseless. Intense scrutiny now focusing on how the New Year's Day Lockman fire smoldered underground for nearly a week and then reignited on January 7th. The images are impossible to forget.
Seen anything like what's happening in LA right now?
This area of Altadena has become an absolute wasteland.
This was the apocalyptic scene driving along Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu.
See what it looks like today. It is still empty plot after empty plot. There's a lot of for sale signs. Only about 24 building permits have been issued and approved for construction out of the hundreds of homes that burned in this area. This is amazing.
It is.
Yes, it is. It's coming along.
In Altadena, we reconnected with the Edwards family, one of the few who have made real progress.
Are you concerned about this neighborhood changing?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. A lot of people, if they could, they would probably stay, and they just don't have the resources. And it's heartbreaking.
But they say it's their faith that's carrying them through.
We cover the home with scriptures.
It means the Lord has helped us.
Symbols of resilience forever embedded in the bones of their new home.
Yeah, scriptures in the foundation there. Liz joins us now from the Pacific Palisades. So Liz, beyond the tragedy of all this and beyond the resilience, there's still so much anger. What's the latest on that lawsuit you were mentioning?
Yeah, Gotti, thousands of residents here in Pacific Palisades have joined these lawsuits. Many of those folks showed up here today in protest for a rally they called They Let Us Burn rally. And what they're really focused on here is that January 1st fire that officials say was started by an arson, but residents want to understand how it was able to smolder underground and then reignite into what we now know as the Palisades fire. These are ongoing lawsuits, but we do expect in the coming days to actually get depositions from some of the firefighters who responded to that fire on January 1st. And we expect that some of them may say that they felt they left too soon, that they were forced to leave too soon. As for the state's response, they're calling it baseless primarily because they are arguing that the fire did not start on state land. They are saying that it started on city land, but that is in dispute as well. The city's response, just yesterday, we heard from the new Los Angeles fire chief who said that at the time the fire department fully believed that New Year's Day fire was extinguished, but he's acknowledging now they realized there were shortcomings in their response and they're vowing to do better, Gotti.
Yeah, well, hopefully they do. Liz Kreutz, thank you so very much. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything. ChatGPT getting into healthcare. How OpenAI is hoping a new feature is going to use your medical records to answer health-related questions. That's next.
Right,
90 seconds. Oh my gosh, we do not have very much time to chat today. 90 seconds. All right, hit me with what you guys. Let's see. NBC News says have live chat for every news show, but they're killing. I'm not scared of your opinions. I do appreciate everybody chatting, and we go mod light. Like I do want to hear what everybody has to say, but please be nice to each other.
About a minute.
Say what you think about what's going on, but don't fight with each other. I know you from the news, but my children know you from Miss Rachel. Thanks, Matthew. This is up, right? Let's see.
Perfect.
Can I have a mug too, Tina? You're definitely top of the list. Let's see. And Sean, thanks. We're going to keep the format up as long as we possibly can. Guess who we have in the house? The one and the only Dr. Akshay Sayal.
Hey, look how cool that is.
Yeah, our favorite doctor in the world. He's going to tell us if this is a good idea or it's a bad idea. We'll see. We're good? What time's our? 20. 20 seconds. Okay. Oh, shoot. Let me hit this.
You're good.
Okay, here we go.
15.
Hey, welcome back. In tonight's Future of Everything, we are talking big news in the world of healthcare. First, OpenAI is rolling out this new ChatGPT feature known as ChatGPT Health. But good luck trying to sign up because I'm still on the wait list. This new feature encourages users to connect their medical records and wellness apps like Peloton, like Apple Health. But the AI company says it's not intended for treatment or diagnosis. And then there's this new set of guidelines recommended by RFK Jr. and the Make America Healthy Again influence. They say in reverse to the usual food pyramid that we're used to, it's kind of upside down. We should be eating way more protein, move over some of the grains, some of the rice, some of the bread maybe over processed food. So we're gonna be making room for meat, cheese, veggies. We'll see. Let's bring in NBC News medical reporter Dr. Akshay Sayal to talk a little bit more about all these health updates. Dr. Sayal, starting with this new piece of AI tech, I got a 404 like error code first, and now I'm on the wait list. Have you used this? Does it seem like it's working?
So the wait list is out now, and I was actually on a press call today with OpenAI, with their head of health, and we were sort of talking about how omnipresent this has become in the doctor's office. You know, I'm an internist here at UCLA, and every day I have at least 5 patients who say, you know, I've been experiencing, you know, symptoms like this, this, and this, and I put it into ChatGPT, and here's what it told me. And, you know, we hear mixed reactions from doctors. Some of them roll their eyes. I tend to be more of the, I like that patients are doing it. I like that they are taking initiative, that they're taking interest and ownership in their health. We all know the wait times to get into a doctor, so this is kind of a good stopgap, at least until you can get some face time with your doctor.
Okay, so people are coming in with their own chat logs.
Oh, every day.
Do you guys use AI? Like, do you use ChatGPT? Is there an AI tool that doctors are like, no, Gemini is better, or no, you know, Claude is better? What do your doctors use?
So we lean towards something called Open Evidence. And Open Evidence is a sort of AI chatbot for doctors. You actually need an NPI, a medical license, to actually make an account. And what this sort of does, you know, medical research and innovation is moving at lightning speed, and as doctors, you spend a lot of time seeing patients. You don't always have as much time as you want to read up on things and to keep up with this pace of innovation. And so Open Evidence does a good job of searching through clinical trials, the latest research. You can actually put in patients, you know, blood pressures, lab values like cholesterol, things like that, and it can sort of help you guide along the treatment plan. But of course, everything is supervised by us. We are not just referring out to the AI chatbot.
Does it seem like there's a very big difference? I mean, you're like, yeah, you've got your AI, that's cute. This is my doctor AI.
Oh yeah. I kind of like that it's a little safeguarded right now. We'll see how that goes in the future.
That goes, especially with what the OpenAI is now unveiling. Meanwhile, the pyramid, now upside down pyramid. What's your take here?
I like it. You know, overall, I have some things which I'll get to, but you know, you can see the food pyramid on the screen there. But basically, more emphasis on whole foods, real foods, as you're saying. You can see fruits and vegetables on the right, protein, dairy, those sorts of things on the left. A couple concerns I have with this. You know, one, I do agree we do need to be eating a little bit more protein than the old guidance. The old guidance, Scotty, was about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram, which is enough to sort of keep you alive, keep your heart beating. But if you really want to thrive and maintain a lot of lean muscle mass, especially as you age, we lose 1% of muscle mass every year. It's important to increase that a little bit. So I do agree with that. The concern is, how are you going to be getting that protein? Are you going to be eating more processed foods like protein bars and more saturated fat like a ribeye steak every night? You know, you don't want to do that. You want to focus more on plant-based protein.
Plant-based protein, but steak? I mean, it's kind of crazy because just a little while ago, I remember, you know, all of a sudden red meat was out. Now red meat's back in every other night.
You know, it's exhausting, right? Because we see the same thing with coffee. One time, you know, people are saying drink coffee, then they're saying don't drink coffee. I tend to be on the realm that you want a doctor who is open to changing their mind. You don't want one who is rigid and not looking at new evidence. So in a sense, changing your mind is almost a good thing. It's showing you're open to more data. So find somebody that it does share that opinion.
With that, we will have to go out for a steak dinner. Dr. Akshay Syal, thank you so very much.
Anytime. That's
going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gotti Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned to NBC News Now. All right, Lisa, we got out a little early for you. We got out a little early. Okay, so now it's the
So how does this work?
debrief.
Yeah.
This is the debrief. This is the chat has been a. You guys have been messy today. You guys have been real messy today.
Someone just ordered Taco Bell.
I know.
Someone named
Let's see.
Ghost.
All right, yeah. You can hear Lisa still, right? Dude, not only, look, this is not the commercial part. This is just where we just chat afterwards part. But not only have I had protein bars, have you seen the new like Costco $14 chomps?
No, what's that?
Dude, they have cheap chomps that I think taste better than like the protein chomps. And so yeah, Min brought them in today, and they're cheaper and they're way better. So I'm gonna be stocking up on those. Lisa, you better supply those for us when we come to New York.
I love this. This is
I go all out with the
Gotti, you're the goat brother.
expensive
Keep it
chomps.
going.
Not a sponsor.
You stop. That's probably my actual brother. Thank you. Let's see. What else? Trump said, hey, Trump said, I was reading a lot of what you said, and I respect everybody's opinion here. The Costco brand protein bars.
I do like the Kirkland protein bars.
I need to start checking that out. And then what else here? Healthy oils and fats are good for you if they're delicious. I was a vegetarian for a few months.
Everyone needs
Healthiest I
more
ever
protein.
felt.
There we go. See?
Ghost, I can try to do that sometime. Sweet berry wine, Tina. Yeah, that's a food group, right?
Actually, have you been getting asked about protein a lot recently? I feel like because it's such a fad these days. Dunkin' Donuts now has protein drinks. Starbucks has protein drinks. Do your patients ask you about this a lot?
Protein drinks?
Just protein in general, like.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Didn't you watch our segment on that, Lise? Don't you watch?
Lisa,
our show?
you need to read the book Outlive by Peter Attia. It'll change your life.
off.
It's like the best thing I've read in the last year.
What was it?
I'll text it to you, but it's that longevity physician, Peter Attia, and he kind of goes into the reason we need to be eating more protein. And a lot of it has to do with frailty as you get older. We lose so much muscle mass that, people fall and they break things. And so it's really not dangerous until you get into like the 3 grams per kilogram range. So we're nowhere near that with this new recommendation.
Yeah. I also saw this thing where you're supposed to like jump and calcify your bones and like try to impact your bones like you do apparently.
Tune in next week.
Yeah, tune in. No, tune in. You know what we're going to talk about next week? Lisa, I'm pitching it to you right now. Face masks. My wife got one of those like red light face masks. Yeah, am I using it? Maybe. Tune in. Stay tuned for that. Anyway,
Do you feel younger?
Love you guys. Thank you guys so very much. Huh?
All right. Do you
have
feel
to watch.
younger and rejuvenated?
You'll have to watch. See if
He
I
looks
have any
great.
pimples.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching, guys.
So cool. I love